Erin Delmore is the senior political correspondent for Bustle News. She joins me now to talk about this from Washington. Thank you for joining us, Erin.
Thank you, Rena.
You bet. So Republicans are taking a lot of hits on health care, and those who did go back and hold town halls over the recess were really grilled on this. What do you think the future is of the Senate bill?
So the challenge here is going to be getting to 50 votes. And like you said, as we've seen over this July 4th recess, pressure from constituents is not helping to get Republicans closer to an agreement. You mentioned the bill is unpopular on both sides. The challenge here is finding a way to court enough members of the Republican caucus in the Senate to pull over the conservative factions as well as the moderates. Now, some of these provisions of Obamacare have become very popular. Medicaid expansion was taken up by a lot of Republican governors. They're now pressuring their senators to keep some of the main tenets of Obamacare. Of course, that's anathema to the more conservative faction.
Yeah, and you know, Senate Leader Mitch McConnell has recently said that they're going to try and pass a smaller bill to fix the exchanges. Do you think that's a concession?
So that's what Republicans are charging. They're saying passing a smaller bill, even working together with Democrats, is not the repeal and replace that they promised their voters. This is something that Mike Lee, Ted Cruz are really digging their heels in on. It's also something the White House hasn't necessarily come forward to support. President Trump said that he was looking to repeal and then wait a bit before replacing. Now, that's not what we've heard from Mitch McConnell, but we're also waiting to see if McConnell is saying this to put pressure on his Republican members.
I want to turn to another legal battle for the Trump administration. Department of Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. She's being sued by 18 states and the District of Columbia over a rule to protect student loan borrowers. This is from fraudulent schools. What do you know about this, and why does Secretary DeVos want a reset on this issue?
So Betsy DeVos is a lightning rod, especially for Democrats, and the Department of Education here is alleging that this is a partisan lawsuit. She faces a challenge because, of course, she's been held up by private education. She's been sort of lambasted by the left as somebody who stands up for these private college, university, school systems, the executives rather than the students. That's why this is so problematic for her now. What she's fighting against is something that was proposed by the Obama administration and set to take effect on July 1st. Now, back on June 14th, she said, let's take a moment, let's hit pause and reset. Up in the balance here are students who have either been part of a widespread fraud case while in their universities or students who were enrolled in universities at the time they closed. Basically, this rule would fast track their application to get their student loans forgiven. There's also a provision in there that says that universities and colleges can't bar students from making a legal claim against them in the future, basically saying you can't make students waive their rights. That's what's at stake here.
And as we also mentioned, I want to get your take. The president wrapping up his second overseas trip at the G20 summit. What's been the reaction so far in Washington to the president's performance?
So the sideline meetings are the ones that are actually making the headlines here. Of course, this is a summit of 20 member nations, but President Trump's one-on-one meetings, especially with Putin and with Peña Nieto, have made the headlines. This is the first interaction between President Trump as president with Vladimir Putin, and of course, the Russian election meddling made headlines here. But the discussions that came out of this meeting are in dispute. Basically, there were 6 people in the room: Sergei Lavrov, his counterpart Rex Tillerson, Putin, Trump, and 2 translators. So you have the Russians who've come out and said, we spoke about this, and President Trump accepted President Putin's admission here that he had no role, Russia had no role in election meddling. You have Tillerson pushing back on that a little bit and saying this is going to hinder U.S.-Russian relations going forward.
All right, Erin Delmore, thank you so much for joining us, Erin. Great speaking with you.
Thank you, Rena.